witch is so unique.
The gift of witchcraft.
I was able to see, hear, and communicate with spirits.
A very personal relationship between a person and spirit. Carnal lust and fun things like that.
Working with different energies and spirits and communicating.
Creating magic.
Powerful ritual and powerful spells. She's actually sticking me in the cold.
The role of the witch is to make change.
Blessed be, y'all. Blessed be. People ask me like, okay, I'm a witch and I don't know what to do.
20 years ago, 3 young friends realized they were witches.
They scattered to different parts of the world following magic and spirit.
Now, they're back in their hometown to share what they've learned.
Welcome to That Witch Life Podcast, your home for living as a witch in today's world.
Hey everybody, welcome to That Witch Life Podcast live from SoMoTechCon 2023. I'm Courtney, I'm your host today, and I'm here
with... I'm Hillary, a co-host today.
And I'm Kanani, and I'm super excited.
And we are here with the Laurell K. Hamilton. I'm just blown away that you agreed to talk with us. And I know that the chat of our people are just thrilled and excited. And we have so much to talk about. First, if you haven't heard of Laurell K. Hamilton, get out from under your rock and come in and get into the world. She is the author of the #1 New York Times bestselling Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series and the Merry Gentry Fey Detective series, with more than 40 novels published and 20 million books sold. Laurell continues to create groundbreaking fiction inspired by her lifelong love of monster movies, ghost stories, mythology, folklore, and things that go bump in the night. She lives in St. Louis with her family. In her free time, which I don't even understand how that's possible, Laurell trains in Filipino martial arts with a specialization in blade work. You can learn more online at laurellkhamilton.com. Laurell, welcome to the show and to SoMoTechCon. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I am thrilled to be here and talk with everybody. I will say this, because it came out in the middle of the pandemic, I do have one other series started.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel Havelock series.
Oh, wow.
Angels and Demons, but one of the main detectives is Detective Ravensong, and she is Wiccan. And
all right.
Awesome.
Nice.
And I enjoyed, so many people thought that because I was doing angels that I was abandoning my faith as a witch. And I went, you didn't read the book, did you? You didn't read the book.
No. You're like, you looked at the cover. That's cute.
No. No. Well, since you've outed yourself as a witch, we're going to ask you the first question, which is, how did you first know that you were a witch or a magical person?
Well, how did I know I was a witch, or how did I know that I was psychic? Because it's two different questions.
Ooh.
Both.
Give us the chicken and the egg. Which one came first? And then,
psychic, I've had prophetic dreams from a very early age, and they're freaking useless. Let me just add that part.
Yeah.
Because, you're 5 and you have a dream, and I actually had a dream that my mother would die if she left the house that day when I was 6. And I tried, and I woke up, I tried to tell her, but I was 6, and she kissed me, went, and she drove off, and she had a car accident and she died. She never came home.
Wow.
And many years of therapy to be able to realize that wasn't my fault. I was 6. No one's going to.
That's so confusing as a 6-year-old, right? Because you're like, did I do that? It's how do you know what that is? It's very hard to have premonitions like that when we're young, I think.
Yes, very much so. And I'm happy to say I don't have them much. They're usually, it has to be something really dire for me to get that one. That is not a prolific gift for me, which I'm happy with. So the gift came early. And I was raised in a family, I was raised with my relatives telling me stories of my grandmother and my uncle and aunts telling me that they had seen ghosts, that ghosts were just real. It was an accepted thing in our family that you could see ghosts. That was just reality. And I grew up in a home where that was just true. So the gift came very early. And then I spent many years trying to find a therapist to help me with some of my gifts that and I prayed very hard. I was Episcopalian. I was Christian, like Anita still is, and like Anita Blake is. And what I was sent was a friend who had a very close friend that had a friend that was a Wiccan priestess. And I tried priests, and that wasn't helping me. So I went to the Wiccan priestess, and bless her heart, she was so kind to me and so careful of me. We worked with the saints, we worked with angels at first, and she and I will tell, I prayed very hard. I said, you can't mean this, God, come on.
Right.
And, but no, he did. He did. He meant that this was my path. And this was somebody who could help me with all my gifts when mainstream therapy couldn't help and priests couldn't help, traditional religion couldn't help. She was the person who helped me accept my gifts, understand my gifts. Therapy helped me work through some of the trauma of my gifts, but she really helped me get a handle on them.
There's a difference between between the trauma of them and then like someone that can be like, no, this is what this is. And like, if they're not someone that understands that, it's going to be very confusing because you're like, well, I'm telling someone this and they're going, okay, versus someone who can explain it.
They either think you're crazy.
Yes.
Or they think that if you pray hard enough, it'll go away. Yeah. Which is not helpful.
Neither helpful. Yeah.
But I think it's also a really powerful reminder that witchcraft and therapy can go hand in hand.
They can. Right? They can. And you can do them simultaneously. Not every Wiccan priestess is a therapist it's too much of a burden. You shouldn't try to double burden somebody unless they're up for it. You need to I know a lot of us do use our priestesses as therapy, and I was honored to be the person that my priestess called up and talked things over with. Because who does the priestess go to? Who's the priest go to? And but you have to be careful if you've got a priest or priestess, if you're lucky enough to have one in our faith. Do not always trauma dump on them. Maybe combine that with therapy. They're complementary if you get the right therapist.
Right. Yeah.
It's so true. We've talked about that a lot.
So priestesses are cheaper than therapy. Well, that's really not a very nice thing.
Right. I'm going to say, magic is not a replacement for good therapy.
No.
Exactly.
Bingo.
Exactly. Yeah. And magic can be therapeutic, but it is not therapy.
Yeah.
Right.
And there are people that will spend hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars on tarot readings or Reiki or whatever, but they won't go to a therapist. And I know a Reiki worker that literally told one of her clients, she says, I don't know what to do. She says, I can't help him. He needs a therapist. And I told him he's going to go through all his money. But some people find therapy very, very intimidating.
And it's like you said, sometimes you have to shop around. You have to try numerous ones because the first one may not be, be the one for you. So I'd love to go ahead. I'm sorry.
Let me add one thing. I figured you might ask this question. So I came prepared. Actually, what convinced me I was Wiccan, that this was my path of faith, not just that the priestess that I went to for help with my gifts, but the research before I found a priestess to help me with my gifts, I was doing the research for the Merry Gentry series. A Kiss of Shadows, the first book. This is the original cover.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank you. I like it too. The research for the Merry Gentry series is what put me in the mindset to understand what the priestess was telling me and what we were doing. Because I'd done the research into Celtic mythology, and that was the original pantheon that came to me.
So I love that you're doing research for your fiction, and then you found a part of yourself in that.
I find that my research for my fiction is usually ahead of me. I researched polyamory for the Anita Blake series before I realized I was poly. Same for BDSM. And then for Mary, I researched witchcraft and Wiccan, being Wiccan before I got there.
So also, was that the same thing with vampire werewolf hunting as well?
Not so far.
Not yet. Not yet.
Not yet.
She's like, no,
It's much further ahead of her.
Yes.
Still.
Amazing. Well, as you mentioned, you have built just an incredible career creating and sharing stories of the supernatural. And, you have been rightfully credited for like fostering and launching the urban fantasy genre. So, what originally fostered your love and fascination with monsters, and who were some of your favorite monsters when you were a kid?
Well, like I said, I was raised with my grandmother telling me ghost stories and things, and they were real ghost stories. It wasn't just ghost stories. It was that this happened, that this family member saw this and went through this experience. So that left a big impression. But by the age of 5, even before my mother passed, I was begging to stay up and watch Frankenstein, the original Frankenstein, Boris Karloff. And my grandmother didn't want to stay up with me, even though it was summer. It was on the late creature feature hour in Europe. And she said, you can only stay up if you leave one light on and you do it by yourself. And I said, okay. She didn't expect me to say okay. And I made it all the way to Igor torturing the monster with the torch. And then that was too scary. I turned off the light, turned off the TV, and raced to bed, and then jumped very far so that the monster in the bed didn't get me.
Yeah.
But for me, I've loved scary things as long as I can remember. Again, decades of therapy. I really thought that my mother's death so early had aimed me this way. But no, I have too many memories of loving scary things before that. So I came this way. The tragedy was extra. So I've always loved anything that could eat me, or anything with teeth. I have a thing from early age. I love vampires and shapeshifters. Anything with teeth. If I had actually gone for that master's degree by the time in biology instead of stopping with my undergrad, I probably would have gone into something predatory that could eat me. So yeah.
Laurell, you described how I, as a 43-year-old woman, go to bed at night. I turn off the lights as fast as I can. I jump into the covers as far as I can. I pull the covers over my head and make sure all my feet and arms and everything's tucked inside so the monsters under the bed can't get me. I still go to bed that way as a 43-year-old woman. I am afraid of all the things that you're discussing. I love that you love them. I'm such a crybaby.
I do not go to bed that way anymore. I go to bed calmly, but I know what's under my bed. There's no room for monsters. It is too packed full.
I love that.
And I also, let's just say there are enough weapons in the house that I no longer fear that.
So if the creatures come in, because you have your weaponry surrounding you, you can sleep well at night.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes.
I had similar things when because my early horror movies, I didn't see Freddy Krueger or Jason until I was an adult, because the horror movies that I saw growing up were the Boris Karloff Frankenstein, the Bela Lugosi Dracula, and the original Werewolf. And I remember afraid to look out the window into our cul-de-sac, thinking I would see Bela Lugosi out there in black and white with the rest in color.
I'll still have movies. Every once in a while, I'll get a movie though that sends me right back there. And your common sense just goes out the window. Even though I know there's so many boxes, I have it packed underneath the bed. That was actually my cure for under the bed. I just made sure that it was so packed full, there's no way anything is getting under there except maybe their cat.
Yeah.
That was, I offer this. I offer this as a potential solution for you, that just pack it under there so that nothing else can be under the bed.
Actually, I know for a fact nothing can, because I have drawers under my bed. So
okay, then
realistically speaking, nothing can exist under the bed. It doesn't help. The crazy is real. The crazy inside here and the belligerent hamster is a real problem. And so, like I said, there is
hamster.
I'm going to New Orleans next week. I'm so excited. I'm going with a friend, and I've literally packed nightlights. I'm a 43-year-old woman, and I have nightlights
New Orleans,
because I don't go anywhere without nightlights.
I think that makes sense though when you're in New Orleans. So, but one of the things, go ahead.
I'm going to behave myself now, because the little part of me is going, nightlight, really? That's cute.
My philosophy is I need to see what's going to eat me.
Is that why Kanani stayed at my house night before last, and she asked about a nightlight? I assumed it was for her kids. I now know it was for her. Okay.
It actually was for my kids. It's funny. I'm not actually afraid of the dark, but it's more like I know I'm going to get up in the middle of the night and I'm going to have to walk to go to the bathroom, or I'm going to have to go somewhere, and I don't want to trip and fall on my face and break my face, because that's what I do. And so for me, it's more, I just like I said, I don't mind the fact that I'm going to see the monster that's about to eat me. I'm good with that. I just need to be able to see what the hell is going on. That's all it is. And my children are ingrained in the same way, because they've always had a nightlight for that same reason. So they're not used to dark.
Okay. I'm one of those people that needs it to be very, very dark to sleep well. And so, my fear of the dark as a child, and then my fear of the dark was reimagined after I had my diving accident. And so I'm not afraid of the dark anymore, but because I have to have it dark to sleep, so I have no choice. I would rather have sleep, because lack of sleep, you will hallucinate and see monsters.
You will freak yourself out.
Yeah, there's a terror to not being able to sleep. I understand. With a newborn, I'm like, oh
dear God.
Yeah, I'm the same. It has to be pretty dang dark for me to be able to sleep. I mean, like, sometimes I'll leave like a little hallway light or the bathroom light so I can see my way to there, because I have terrible night vision. But otherwise, yeah, if there's like a lot of light coming through, I can't sleep at all.
Yeah, me either.
So, you write about so many different supernatural creatures. We've and the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series is often associated with vampires, but that's far from the only thing she deals with in those novels, right?
Very true.
But so I one of the questions that I had been wanting to ask you for a long time, I was so excited to get a chance, is, what do you think the vampire represents? Margot Adler, before she passed, wrote this fascinating book about vampires and how they reflect, they represent things that that collectively we fear in society. And she made a comparison that the early Bram Stoker's Dracula was very much, anti-immigrant, honestly, and that represented a lot of fear that area had about immigrants from Eastern Europe. And then you have like the sexy vampires that might have represented people being afraid of the sexuality, and that she brilliantly pointed out that True Blood, the vampires were trying to deal with their addiction to blood in many ways that we as humans are trying to deal with our addiction to oil. And so I'm curious, and also Anita's relationship with vampires absolutely evolves from something she has to fight to something she has more compassion for. What do you see really any of these supernatural characters represent, but I'm curious about the vampires in particular.
Well, one of the interesting things about vampires to me is that vampires are probably the most widespread around the world. Even whatever you call them, something that drinks our blood is in almost every culture. And that was fascinating to me. Almost every culture I could find has some kind of blood drinking supernatural entity. And so the fact that it's that widespread, it means that either A, there's something so widespread that we all talk about it, or B, there's some need for vampires that we all need, so that we all have to create our version of them. And either way you go, it is a deep psychic thing for us. Vampires have been something that drinks our blood. Blood is very precious. I think it goes back to the idea that we all know at an early age, back when we were, just coming into Homo sapiens, even before that, it didn't take long to know that if too much blood spills out, we die. Mm-hmm. And so blood must be precious. And what would be scarier than something that would drink your blood and kill you? Especially, one idea of the vampire is that it's because of how many plagues we had and how contagious disease were, how many wasting diseases we had. So that's why by the 1700s, when you talk about vampires, you talk about one person gets it, one person dies as a vampire, and then her family begins to die, his or her family. Yes. And it was probably, a lot of them were probably some kind of contagious disease.
Right.
And so that makes sense. And then you had I did research on being buried alive. Trust me, you don't want me to share some of these stories.
No.
Nope. I'll pass that one. Mm-hmm.
And so if you take the thing of communicable diseases and then you add the fact that sometimes you got buried alive, and so you'd go past the cemetery, you'd hear screaming. And instead of thinking, oh my God, didn't we just bury, Tom or Roger or whoever, we should go look at that. They would flee into the night, and then they would come back in the morning. And when they dug up the coffin, the body they were alive if they'd gotten to them, but nobody ever did. Nobody was ever willing to go dig up the grave in the middle of the night. And part of me is going, I can understand that, but part of me is going, cowards.
Yeah.
You can save them. So I think those are two things that kept the vampire going as a thing, contagious disease, and also being buried alive. But I know that psychic vampires exist. They absolutely exist, because we've all been around people that the longer we're with them, the more tired we are.
Yes.
And every time we see them, we're just so tired. And sometimes if you even call somebody on the phone, there's certain people you just don't want to deal with. And as witches, we know that we have to, at the end of the day, you have to get all the creepy crawlies off of you that have tried to attach when you go out in public. And so that absolutely is a thing. And so vampires as I write them, no. But it's too widespread for it not to be more at the same time. And werewolves, shapeshifters, werewolves especially, research on that. Werewolves were serial killers before the word exists.
Interesting.
If you had a crime so horrific that they didn't want to think that people could do it, they accused them of being werewolves. A werewolf would tear a woman apart. A werewolf would consume flesh, but a human being wouldn't do that.
Right.
There's more than one story of families that turned to robbing people, even back as far as Greece, ancient Greece, where the family would waylay people, take their cargo, their jewelry, and eat them. They were a cannibalistic family, but the original stories didn't call them a family; they called them ogres, or evil giants, or something. Anytime a crime was too horrific for people to want to believe other people could do it, they turned that person into a monster. But if you actually read the court records on some of the early werewolves that were executed for being a werewolf, you find that they're really a sexual sadistic serial killer before there was vocabulary for it.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And now we don't necessarily associate them with, with supernatural creatures, but we're very quick to slap people with pathology, to try to other them. Like they're not like us because they are they'll
still say that if someone does something horrific, they'll say it's not human, they're a monster.
Yes.
Even though it's a person, it's clearly a person that's been arrested or that's done whatever this is, but that's exactly right. They'll say, it's inhuman and they're a monster.
If it's too far outside what we want to think other people do, They're monsters. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's still to this day. And yes, we put pathologies on people and stuff. And because nobody wants to say evil anymore. No one wants to say evil. It's psychological. It's some kind of something. No one wants just to go, well, that person's just evil. I don't know if any of you have read The Road Less Traveled. I'm forgetting the name of the doctor. Decades ago, it sat at the top of the New York Times list for months. It was one of the first books to do that. He was a psychologist or psychiatrist. He wrote a sequel to that, or another book about the nature of evil. And his definition of evil is one of my favorites. Somebody is not evil if they're doing evil things. If somebody tells them that's evil, that's hurting me, you're hurting me when you do that. And if they then mend their behavior, they weren't evil, they were ignorant. They did not know better. But if you tell that person you're hurting me and they continue to do it and even say, I don't care if it hurts you, I'm still going to do it, that is evil.
And there's a sense of righteousness in there. Like I'm hurting you for your own good.
You don't care about the motive. The motive doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The motive doesn't matter. It matters you're hurting me. If you keep doing it, then you're choosing to be evil.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And it's so funny because and that makes me love hearing you talk about this makes me love even the Anita Blake character even more in her evolution, where she stops fighting and she starts, trying to I don't know, align herself with these supernatural creatures that have ultimately been demonized. Was that a thought you had when you started the series, or how did that happen?
Well, when I started the series, I was 24. So Anita and I were the same age. So when I started it, I was 24. And so in your early 20s, at least most of us see the world in black and white, good and evil. There's very little gray. And then as you get older, the world gets more gray. It's harder to tell right, wrong in absolutes. And I think that part of my journey is part of everybody's journey from 20s to 30s to beyond. Anita's still in her early 30s. I am not. I'm seriously rocking that crone, and I'm good with that. I didn't like being a maiden when I was one. Thank you very much. But part of Anita's journey is going from, she saw too many people that were evil, more evil than the monsters, the quote unquote monsters, the supernatural. And after a while, when you see more of the supernatural beings trying to be good while the people are being horrible, you begin to have to rethink things. And she does. I never thought we'd be where we are in the series when I started. I really didn't. I really genuinely, like Anita did, that no matter how pretty they were, they're still walking corpses. Yeah. And the other thing is that I have been very honored to have real police officers and real military combat people, veterans, talk to me about their experiences. I've never used any of their books, their stories directly in the books, but I wanted to talk to them. I started with police officers, and then I realized that Anita now is a U.S. Marshal with the Preternatural branch. Really, they're executioners. They're not cops. They have a badge, but they're executioners. Her level of violence, actually, you rarely see as a police officer. You really usually have to go to combat for this. So I talked to people about it, and they told me their stories, and they helped shape Anita. If I had not talked to real people that had actually gone through some things similar, Anita would be different.
Yeah.
And so would Edward. Edward and Anita is both, their journey was very, very much shaped by some of the people who went through, as close as I could come to analogies of experiences. And it really shaped how, with police officers about 10 years in, you realize you're never going to save the world. There's more bad guys coming. And so you just want to get home to the people you love. Are you finding another job by then, or you fall into a bottle or some kind of addiction? It's especially if you're in violent crimes of any kind.
Yeah.
And Anita's in therapy in the books now, but because of talking to people and the price you pay for that level of violence. So it was shaped both by just life experience in general and specific experience for that level of violence. She's actually very healthy for the level of violence she's experienced.
Yeah. Friends who are joining us, go ahead and put your questions if you have them in the chat. We've got a couple of more things for Laurel, and then we'll go back and forth and make sure that people can get their questions answered. Diana said, I think that Olaf may be the scariest character in the Anita Blake series. Laurel, what do you think?
She is not alone in that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people think Olaf is the scariest person I've created. Originally in Obsidian Butterfly, when I created him, I wanted to see if I could create a serial killer character that could be part of the team and be useful.
Mm-hmm.
And not just be, the fact that he's a serial killer is kind of secondary to how useful he is in the investigation. And I managed that. I honestly didn't know if he would be alive by the end of the first book. I really thought he would go off script and go for Anita, and then Edward would have to kill him. And I am as shocked as anyone that he has survived this many books.
Mm-hmm.
I really thought we were going to have to kill him sooner. And I don't know what we're going to do with him at this point, because we kind of like him as a character. He certainly has a lot of fan base, but there are so many character fans that I have that ship hard Olaf and Anita. And I didn't expect that. I guess I should have. I've done the research, and real life serial killers get lots of women wanting to come and visit them and marry them in prison.
Yeah.
So I shouldn't have been surprised.
It's so bizarre, and it's 100% factual.
Yeah. Well, I think
I let me say, ladies, not your job to fix the bad boys.
Oh, but to heal his pain.
Especially not one that wants to kill you. Just a thought.
And some things can't be healed. There is no woman on this planet that is going to heal pathology that deep.
Yeah.
If it's curable, and I don't think it is, but if it is, Olaf would have to seek deep, deep therapy. And I just don't see him doing that.
Mm-hmm.
Even if it could be. I don't even know if it can be. If you're that broken, can it really be? I don't know. And he is a fascinating character. Even to me, his character arc surprised me. He seems to care for Anita as much as he can care for anybody. And I don't know what we're going to do with him. I'll be honest. I plan his death every book he's in.
And it just doesn't happen.
He manages to behave himself for another book.
Wow. And
I love how you say that. Like, you're the author and you're like, I don't know what's going to happen with this character. Like, I thought I was going to kill him off, but here he is. I love that. That's so fun to hear.
I write partly in order to read. So what I found early on in my career is if I planned everything out too much, like outlines, like they tell you to, it takes away the energy I use to write. So if I overplan, then my muse feels like we've already written this book. So I have to be very sparing on what I do before I do my first draft. Once I have a first draft, then I can plan and plot and do everything. But I have to get at least a first draft out before I do that.
That's a helpful reminder, because I'm also a fiction writer, and my genre is urban fantasy, and sometimes I'm like, but this can't happen because I don't know what's going to happen after that. It's like, just a reminder, the characters are in control. They'll let me know.
There are some writers that outline meticulously and don't let their characters do that. I know there are, and they're successful, but it won't work for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So another question I have, and then there's a couple in the chat I want to bring in. So you answered a little bit of this earlier. I'm curious to know, though, how much of Anita Blake is actually memoir or autobiography for you? Because I know for a lot of people, their main characters are kind of like themselves in a parallel universe, or, perhaps Sans actually dealing with vampires or werewolves. How much of Anita's journey mirrors your own?
Well, I made her voice on paper similar to mine. It was first person narration. I figured it was a series that I would make my life easy and make her voice, her vocabulary, how she speaks closer to mine, so it'd be easier to write. I made her my size so that this hand is who I take out to shop for weapons. Because if I'd made her too tall or too much different for me, it would have been really hard to do the research for the weaponry and the fight scenes. So I purposely did that. I gave her my hair because I like my hair and I was going to screw her life up. So I figure, though hers is still black and mine is, I'm rocking that kind of battleship gray at this point.
Iron Crone.
It's so good.
I like that. Iron Crone sounds like an anime character, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It does.
Iron Crone. I mean, they have Iron Maiden. You be the Iron Crone.
Yes. And I had her mother die when she was 8. Mine died when I was 6. I gave her 2 more years. By that time, I'd had enough therapy. Every year you get that you're older, you're healthier with the wound. And so that at that time, that was too much of my psyche. I couldn't imagine writing a first person narration where the character hadn't lost their mother. She kept her father, which I did not have. And one of the reasons he's been off screen the whole time is that I never had a father. My parents were divorced by the time I was 6 months old, and I've seen him 3 times in my entire life. And the last time was at my mother's funeral. So, I didn't know what to do with a father on paper. I have learned through friends and through my husband's interaction with his parents what they're for. And so now I felt finally in Slay, you finally get to see your father on stage for the first time and not just on the phone.
Interesting.
But Anita and I diverged because I married early and I had a child and she did not. And that's really the mindset changes. So I don't want her pregnant, but I would love to be able to say everything I think about pregnancy and motherhood with Anita's voice. That would be fun. Because I love my daughter. I do, but I do not encourage people unless you want to have a child, unless it's coming out of my body. I'm not going to encourage you. Do you want children? Yay. Do you not want children? Okay. But the sarcasm voice, I love Anita's voice for talking about things like that. And, but I don't want to then have to have a child in the series.
Right. Because that would be, it's a whole other layer of complexity there.
Yeah.
And
to say the least.
You have a newborn. I don't know. And if the sexy naked times, the, monkey chandelier swinging kind of thing, small children put a real kibosh on that. Seriously.
Yep. Quiet and sneaky, and gotta do it fast because it don't be too loud. Just got her to sleep.
Don't wake the baby.
Well, I actually did a study on that. If it seems like your baby starts crying every time you start to get aroused and try to have sex, it's not your imagination. They did a study that in the other room, out of sight of each other, if I think they gave the women a toy, to help. Every time they started to get aroused, the baby would cry. And one theory, they don't know how it works, but one theory is it's to keep them from having a baby too close together.
Oh, that's really interesting. And
they really are meant to be a help to not have more babies sooner.
Right. It's like, well, no, honey, we've invented birth control. It's okay.
Yeah.
So.
Baby doesn't know that. Baby doesn't know there's birth control.
Biologically does not understand that. Yep.
But I just thought that was fascinating because
that is fascinating.
Babies seem to have really great timing for that.
Yeah.
And they really do.
Yeah. Yeah. Just right at the precise moment, you're like, okay, here we go.
Yeah, they don't wake up in the middle of the night. They'll sleep through the night unless that's happening. And then suddenly there's what's going on? What's happening? Okay, yeah. Tonight's the night that you can sleep through the night. Of course it is. Yep. Hi, how you doing? How's it going?
Yes. And my goal in life was to never have our daughter walk in on us. That's why we locked the bedroom door. And because especially if you do bondage, children have uncanny
explain
timing.
to that.
And
That's
canny
going to be
timing.
difficult to
It's like,
explain.
Daddy, I want to talk to Mommy. It's like, I'll be right there.
You're like, that's fine.
Just give me a minute. Yeah.
My children went through a phase where they learned that you can use a butter knife to unlock the door. And they didn't understand that Mommy locks the door for a reason, right? So there may have been a phase where their father and I would have to lock the door. And then luckily we had a walk-in closet. And the walk-in closet might have been utilized quite a few times because then that's 2 locked doors that they have to manage to get through because they just thought, well, it's being locked is just an inconvenience. You just grab the butter knife and you unlock the door.
That's what deadbolts.
So I will say that my children haven't walked in on me, but it was no lack of their time.
Well, I didn't realize you turned your walk-in closet into a dungeon. I think that is extremely effective use of condo space.
Yeah,
it really was. I'm not gonna lie.
I've heard other people do that too, and it is a good use of space. But no, no tool using doesn't run in my family. Nobody in my family that I'm genetically related to, but I am aware of, is that good with tools. I had one uncle that was good with tools, but so I didn't have to worry about that. It never occurred to her to get a tool and open the door, and I am grateful for that. I am very grateful for that.
A whole new level of gratitude now.
Literally everyone knows this podcast runs on blood, sweat, tears, and jasmine pearl tea. But now get ready, witches. Our beautiful friends at the Jasmine Pearl Tea Company have some new blends for this summer.
Oh my God. Seriously, everyone knows how obsessed I am with tea, and I am extra obsessed with Jasmine Pearl. Fortune's Fool, which is a pu'er tea for those looking for a more sophisticated tea, is insane. I am in love with it. Plus, it has pigs on the wrapper, which makes it extra amazing.
I need all of that tea.
They're insane. And everyone knows that coffee is my jam. One of the ways that you can get me to drink tea is when you have some sort of a mint tea. And the Northwest mint is absolutely fantastic. It's something that you can make in a large brew and you can put in your fridge so that you can drink it cold during hot months. And it is absolutely marvelous.
Yeah, and also the blackberry fig, which can be enjoyed either hot or iced. I mean, it's the end of the summer. Iced tea is still the thing, but the nights are getting cooler. And so this is a really great one to have around during the transition from summer to autumn. Also, you've got the equinox. It's a great herbal for this coming month and the change in the seasons. And it contains herbs that can be sometimes beneficial for those of us with uteruses.
You really, really need to go check out these teas at thejasminepearl.com. Save 10% with coupon code WITCH2023. That's WITCH2023. And you get free shipping on orders over $35. So get those orders in.
Thank you so much to the Jasmine Pearl Tea Company for being an episode sponsor.
So we have a question in the chat that is about the Anita Blake series. And somebody wants to know if Peter is trying to be part of Anita's poly group. And maybe if you could give us a little bit of background on Peter in case we have folks here who haven't gotten that far in the series yet.
Okay. Peter is, we first meet Peter in Obsidian Butterfly. And it is when Anita finally gets to go home. Okay, back up. So I knew I was going to do a book where I got to finally see Edward, aka we would learn later that he's Ted Forrester. That's his legal identity. And Edward's kind of his spy assassin identity. And when we first meet in the series, he is an assassin that is so bored, and so because he's so good at killing people, he's bored. So he only takes jobs where he could, for supernatural beings, something that might kill him back. And so that's how we've known him. He's more almost an enemy, and then he becomes a friend, and then he becomes like a frenemy for Anita. And then we finally see in Obsidian Butterfly, he calls in the favor of her to back him up. and we get to see where he lives, and it's New Mexico. He just was determined he lived in New Mexico. And I literally told my imaginary friend, I said, you can't live in New Mexico. I created you. I've never been to New Mexico. You can't live somewhere that I've never been. But he insisted. And so I got off the plane in New Mexico, and as soon as I saw those black hills around Albuquerque, I went, damn, you do live here.
He's like, you're welcome. You get to take a trip now.
Yes. So that is the book where we first meet Peter. Peter is 14 when we met him. His sister Becca is 6, and their mother is Donna Parnell. And he is dating Donna, and he first started dating her as his Ted persona. It was part of his cover. And then it got serious. And Anita at first thinks he's just using the widow and her children. And she's livid. She's just furious with him. But by the time you get to the end of the book, you realize that no, he actually cares for Donna and cares for the kids. And I don't want to give the book away, but when the kids are in danger, he risks everything for them. And so does Anita. But every time Peter's on stage, something terrible happens to him. And first book, and the next time we bring him out, he gets clawed up by a were animal and almost killed. And I mean, literally every time we bring this poor person on stage, he is now, I think he's 19 or 20 in the books now. And Serpentine was the last time we see him on stage. And he thinks of Edward as his dad, and so does Becca. And I love Peter's character growth. I love the fact that, before Edward meets him, at 8, he picked up a shotgun and killed a werewolf that killed his father in front of him. And to protect his mother and baby sister, he finished the job. He finished killing the werewolf. So he comes in with a lot of tragedy. He wants to grow up to be in the same business as Anita and Edward is. And he has a crush on Anita because she saved him in the first book. She's the one that saves him from the bad guys. And he has idolized, he's put her she just fit his map. He's fixated on her a little bit. And does he want to join the poly group? I don't think so. He would love to have Anita think of him as dateable, because he's had a crush on her since he met her, or at least since she saved him. But I also think that I don't think he really wants to be part of the poly group. And I don't think he would know what to do with it. It's a lot. The poly group's a lot. But he would like to be a part of Anita's life. And I don't know what that means for him. But for Anita, he's grown up to be attractive. He's an adult now, but he's still in that box of, I met you when you were 14 and you are my best friend's son.
Yeah. It's like you're not going to get out of that. You're always going to be a little boy.
Well, I don't know. I met my husband when he was only 17, and 8 years of friendship later, one day he walked in and I went, when did this happen? When did you get taller and grown up and everything? Because he was a late bloomer. He looked much younger when I first met him. Yeah. So you can cross out of that box, but it's rare. It's very rare.
It is unusual. Yeah, I guess I shouldn't put a never on there. I think myself where I'm like, I couldn't, I run into the younger siblings of my friends, and they're deep into their 30s, and I'm still like, nope. You're still little.
My husband, and we just celebrated 22 years together, is the same age as some of my friends' sons. So that was interesting. My first marriage was to my college sweetheart, but second marriage was to my friend. We'd been friends for 8 years, and I spent many of those 8 years trying to help him date more successfully. You were training him. Well, no, I was just trying. I found him attractive and witty and intelligent and well-read, and we could talk for hours because we were friends. I would only learn later that he was very nervous around any woman he thought he had a chance at. But because I was so much older, when we first met, I was married, and he saw me as Laurell K. Hamilton, the writer, so he didn't think he had a shot at it. And so he was actually able to be himself with me. Mm-hmm. And so every time I tried to fix him up, he would be too nervous. And so I did my best, but in the end, I guess it happened for a reason.
I love it.
I love that.
I love it. Love stories are so good. Well, so there's a question, Q&A that you probably answer this one a lot, but it would probably still be good for folks to hear it. And someone said, how did you come up with they said Anika series, but I think they meant Anita series. Where did the idea come from for the Anita Blake series?
Well, back long ago in the 80s, after college, I discovered hard-boiled detective fiction. I hadn't actually read any. I really got into mysteries after college. And always before that, I just wanted to write horror or dark fantasy, heroic sword and sorcery. But then after college, I started reading mysteries, and I read Robert B. Parker's Spencer series. That was a big influence on me. Through him, found Raymond Chandler, and Raymond Chandler, I am blanking, and my noun server is just gone, nope, it's not there. Raymond Chandler, Dashiell Hammett. Yes, there you go. And, but there were also female detectives, but at that time, there was just V.I. Warshawski by Sarah Paratesky, and the Kinsey Mahoney series by Sue Grafton. That was pretty much it. And they're both great series, don't get me wrong. But what I found is with the men got to cuss, they got to kill people without much remorse, they got to have sex that was fairly casual, and the women, there was no sex, they rarely got to cuss. If they killed somebody, they had to feel really, really bad about it. And I thought this was unfair.
That's bullshit.
And I wanted to create a character that could be as tough as the men and keep up with them.
And she is.
Yeah.
I may have overcompensated just a little. It is me.
Way.
It is me.
In the perfect way.
But so I started off with wanting a character that could keep up with the men and really hold her own. And then I thought, straight mystery, I thought I would get bored for a series. I thought I wouldn't hold my interest. So I combined that with my love of ghost stories and everything goes bump in the night. I combined mythology and folklore, which I've been reading for years, and I combined them all together. And that is where Anita came from. I gave myself enough toys that I thought it would keep me interested, because I'm very methodical. And so I was going to write a mystery series of some kind. That's how I looked at it. So I read mystery series, our long-running series. And at that time, pretty much, long-running series meant mystery. And I found that between book 5 and book 8, people got bored. It was obvious they had a slump. They fell in love with their character or their world or something. I mean, famously, Arthur Conan Doyle tried to kill Sherlock Holmes and did kill him once and then brought him back because it was too popular. Agatha Christie hated Hercule Poirot, that kind of thing. So I wanted to give myself a character in a world that I would love. And so I decided I would combine that and hopefully be able to miss that slump. And I did, because I gave myself, with each book, the world grew and became interesting to me. And so even more. So that helped keep me fascinated. And I was really, it worked. Prior planning.
So this is a question that I love, and it's also probably another one you get a lot, but what advice do you give to aspiring authors and journalists?
Journalists, I can't help you on, because I've never been a journalist. I tried briefly, but I can't behave myself. I can't do just the facts. I'm a fiction writer through and through. So I can't help you on journalism. Also, I can tell you one thing on journalism, though, and that is that I was trained briefly that you get 3 sources before you report. You have to get 3 non-connected sources for a story. And that used to be common in journalism. And now you're trying to get there before somebody with an iPhone gets there. So that's just gone out the window. People don't double check like they did because things are moving too fast. But for fiction, writers write. Writers write. That's one of the big things. I talked to a lot of people, when I was doing the big tours, they would say, what would you give me? I said, well, how often do you write? And a lot of them couldn't answer me. How I wrote my first novel, which is Night Seer, which is Elves, Dwarves, and Dragons, had nothing to do with what I would end up being most famous for. I was in corporate America in a cube farm after college, and I would get up in the morning because at the end of the day I was too fried, and I was not a morning person at that point. I was not a morning person. So I'd get up at 5. I would do 2 pages a day. 2 pages a day, even if what I did for those 2 pages a day was, it's too early, I'm too tired, I can't write. If all I did was bitch for 2 pages, that was still my 2 pages. And I would put it in the pile. It was very important to me to print it out so I could see the growing pile of pages.
Oh, that's so good.
Because it was a visual reminder that I was making progress. And that really helped me. And when I got the first draft done, it looked like a book. It was hundreds of pages. It looked like a book.
Oh,
so,
yes.
And so that really helped inspire me and keep me going. The other advice for new writers, especially on books, is don't try to do extra research before your first draft is done.
Thank you.
Now, when I first started out, you had to go to the library for this, and no writer can go to the library and not get lost.
Yeah.
But now we have our phones and we have the internet, and it's just so convenient to sit there in the middle of the story and go, okay, what does 15th century underwear look like? How do I get my heroine undressed for bed or whatever? Don't do that. What I do is I pick a word that is not in the book. Snowshoe or rutabaga or something that you'll never ever use. Hippocampus is another one. Any word that will not be in the book. Nobody's going to say that. And then for the parts that I needed to research for or I'm not sure on, I put rutabaga. And then my second draft is just going word search and going rutabagas. So I call it, I use aardvark a lot.
This is so gold.
I call it hunting aardvarks. Second draft is just hunting aardvarks. It's just going through and going research, filling in the holes. That's what second draft is. Third draft is when you begin to polish the writing.
Okay, thank you. Spirit speaks through Laurell to me via our listener question.
You're very welcome. Best of luck to you. But even I will forget my own wisdom sometimes because, I'm on my 42nd novel. I don't have to, no, the internet will rabbit hole you. Stop. Do not do your research in the middle of your first draft.
So, another really good question. Do you ever have burnout? And if so, how do you deal with it?
I went through 10 years where the Merry Gentry series and the Anita Blake series were at 2 different publishers. That was before Penguin Putnam became, Penguin and Random House. And I was at Random House and I was at Penguin Putnam before they merged. And I went about 10 years where I had Mary and Anita at 2 different publishing houses, and they did not share well. They each wanted their book, and I was doing 2 big books a year. And I was touring for each publishing house between 3 and 6 weeks. Our longest tour was 26 cities in 28 days.
Oh God.
Oh, that is so much.
It was a lot. It was a lot. Much. And so after somewhere in that 10 years, I seriously burned out. And what do you do? Somewhere in there, I found my poly. We became seriously polyamorous, got our poly group, and that helped. And so finding relationships that sustain you and fill you up. But I'm honestly, for me, I found that going to the gym and using my body, moving my body helps, because we spend so much time in our heads that I think we forget. We really forget that we're supposed to also be bodies, be physical. And so adding more physicality and everything, that's part of it, because it's about as opposite of writing as you can get. I'm a 7th degree in La Costa Kali now, I am honored to say, and I'm an apprentice instructor now, and that has really helped me focus and find myself outside the office. And that's really what you need. I have a tendency to be all or nothing, and you have to be a little bit more well-rounded than that, because otherwise, on one hand, you have to be obsessed with your writing to really do it, especially series. But on the other hand, you have to have something outside of it. Mm-hmm. And it's a really hard balance. It's a really hard balance. I'm actually trying to figure out what renews me now that travel is not as easy to do, and certain things have changed. So I'm trying to figure out what does renew me. One of the things that I've only recently restored to myself is stillness, quiet, no phone, no music, no electronic devices, a book, sitting in a chair with a cup of tea, maybe with one of the animals in the chair with me. That's it. Quiet. I think I honestly, most art comes out of boredom. You're trying to entertain yourself, or you're trying to entertain the people around you. Storytelling came out of that. And we are too entertained now. I think it really hurts us. I think it hurts us coming up with new ideas. I think it hurts, I know it hurts me in my productivity, because it's just too easy to fill my brain up with somebody else's stories, somebody else's ideas, somebody else's art, and not leave enough room for my own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's true. I think that it's such an easy, especially when you're really passionate about something, right? I'm also an all or nothing type of a person. So if I'm really jazzed about a creative project I'm working on, I have to be very mindful of how much of myself I throw in there, because it's very easy for me to be like, oh my gosh, it's happening. And I'm so sucked in that I have to actually physically in my calendar, make sure that I eat. I'm stop, break for food, that I go to the gym or go for a walk, or, or do something physical, yoga, stretching, whatever it is, whatever anyone's capable of doing. And then also just, making sure that I have time to just decompress, whatever that looks like for me. So it's just being being there in that stillness, I think is so key to making sure that you're giving your brain a break, because all of that takes so much emotional and intellectual energy. And if you don't, so I will often set aside time to, especially if I'm in a really big crunch, or I'm really in it, to meditate or to go to do trance work, so that I can just shut everything else out, so I can have just a moment to regroup. And building that into my creative practice was a game changer for actually how much I would get done, right? Because you're not waiting until you're on empty to try and refuel, stuck on the side of the road. You're already thinking about continually maintaining yourself. And I think that's a thing that I wish someone taught me when I was a younger creative, and so I'm so grateful that was passed on to me eventually.
Nobody taught me that either. I'm sorry, all the writers that I grew up being mentored by or knew at all, we all were scrambling and busyness, because we all wanted to make it, whatever that means for you. And
it's the story we tell ourselves that the hustle has to happen, and you can't stop.
And then the idea that the hustle could be counterintuitive to the things you want to do, and human beings' nervous system require a space of quiet.
Yeah.
Well, I actually have been doing some research on the fight or flight, the anxiety response, and one of the interesting things from more than one source is the fact that we didn't evolve to be constantly stressed. That,
No, we didn't. No.
You get up in the morning and you have to go chase down that gazelle or whatever we're going to eat today and catch it, or we have to run from the lion that wants the gazelle too. But once we have finished doing the running or the chasing, then we settle down to either we're saved and we're safe, or we're skinning that gazelle and turning it into hide and meat, and the emergency is over. Well, our bodies do not perceive the difference. If we get anxious, our bodies perceive that as a life or death emergency because they don't have anything else to compare it to. We haven't been in modern times long enough to evolve so that if we get anxious in traffic and we're afraid of, an accident, our bodies think we're about to die.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're afraid to give a speech, your body reacts as if a lion is chasing you. And that is one of the reasons that we are so anxious right now, because there's just so many different things that stress us. And our body doesn't understand the difference between, our body and mind don't understand the difference between true life or death and just anxiety situations. Mm-hmm. And once I found that in the research, I thought that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
I was talking to a friend about that the other day and not just like you were saying, the other part of the stress that our bodies were just not equipped for is, you're equipped for the stress that happens in your own life and in your environment and around you, right? But we know we know so many things. Like our phone is constantly breaking news, breaking news, breaking news, breaking news. You now not just about the trouble in your own experience, but that of your family and the people around them, people that are a world away. Like, you now know of stress and trouble and grief and tragedy and things that just bombard the brain and the senses in a way that just, we're not mentally or emotionally or physically equipped to be able to process all of these things.
There will never be a day when there is not a tragedy somewhere in the world. And once upon a time, unless you watch the 5 o'clock news or the 6 o'clock news or, you didn't know that. And even then it was curated. The editors of the newscasts picked what was going to be on the show, what was going to be left out. And yes, we weren't as well informed, but we also weren't bombarded with so much. And I understand we missed a lot of things, and I'm glad we don't miss them if we don't want to. But honestly, compassion fatigue is a phrase for a reason. we're getting overwhelmed. And I know for me as a writer, especially during certain tragedies and certain situations, I sit down and I think, really, I'm going to make something up on paper and that's going to save the world kind of thing. Well, if you can save the world, if you are Superman or pick your superhero, if you can save the world, please do so. Right now, please. If you can fix this, please do so. But if there is nothing you can do for this tragedy, if there's nothing you can do, literally nothing, you feeling anxious, you feeling guilty, you feeling bad, you beating yourself up are literally grieving for something that does not impact you, hurts you, and doesn't help them.
Right.
If you can donate to something to help the people that are impacted, then if you can do something, donate your time, donate your money, donate something. If you can do something, then do it. But otherwise you have to let it go.
Yeah,
and
it's really so true.
I've been really struggling with that of late. And since the pandemic, I think a lot of us have been struggling with the doom scrolling. And
we've been like in this constant heightened state of so much, not just
and just
the
even
pandemic.
Like what you said, Laurel, is that sometimes because of a lack of journalism, you get a lot of these articles that are clickbaity that have a question mark, like, is this the end of California? ? And then if you actually read and unpack it, it's that one scientist found something and it hasn't been proven yet. And so that they can get away with it because they're saying, we're just asking a question. but in your head, you're like, oh, California's dead.
Oh my gosh, it's happening. Yeah.
Well, back in the day, it was sometime in the 70s that the news broadcast had to then fight for ad revenue. Before that, the news didn't have to have ad revenue. So the news could actually be journalism, true, wonderful journalism, without having to pander to anybody to get ad space. And it was in the 70s somewhere that the networks made them have to have ads and to earn enough money to promote themselves, to make themselves pay. Before that, it was seen as something that was so important you didn't make them have to get ad space. And once they had to fight for ads, it was after that if it bleeds, it leads. And that was the beginning of the end of where we are now, where people are putting things out before they can double check. There's just no way to double check this fast because they don't want to. They don't want to be beaten out by some civilian out there that just happens to have their phone and has recorded it.
So another question. This is a different topic, but really good one. I'm curious if diversity of characters will be thought of for future books, projects, etc., like the inclusion of disabled, deaf, etc. characters. This person pointed out the TV show on Hulu, Only Murders in the Building, has a deaf character and includes ASL, and it was considered groundbreaking. They're curious if you've considered that for current or future projects.
I've already done it.
Already done it, yeah.
I've already done it. In The Laughing Corpse, the villains, the villain of the piece, he's in a wheelchair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right.
And his girlfriend, his beautiful girlfriend, is deaf. She's either deaf or mute. I know she's mute. I know she cannot speak.
Yeah.
I would have to actually double check. I don't know. She is deaf because he says something really horrible in front of her about her. And Anita is kind of shocked and then realizes she doesn't know.
Right. That's right.
That's also the book where we have Wheelchair Wanda, who is the nickname on the street. She is a lady of the evening and she's wheelchair bound. She's based on real research, by the way. I didn't make that up. There was a lady of the evening, sex worker in Florida decades back, and I was doing research on it, and she was in a wheelchair, and the people would come and they'd pick her up, put her in her little fold-up chair in their car, and everything. So I didn't make that up. That's real. That was at one time.
That's amazing.
Most of the things that people are the most shocked about is usually just research. It's not real. It's not, I didn't make it up. If it can happen in our world without my magic system, then it's usually research. So I've already done that. And we had both a good guy and somebody who has a redemption arc, and they're both wheelchair bound. And then we had somebody who was deaf who got to be the sexy babe.
Yeah,
got to be the villain. The Bond girl. She got to be the Bond girl villain. So I've already done that.
Yeah, and that was a long time ago.
That's
Was it considered
second book?
Yeah,
That's early 90s.
Yeah, which was groundbreaking
not common
then?
at that point.
How did people respond to that?
Nobody talked about it.
Interesting.
Most people said they loved it. They loved Wheelchair Wanda, Wanda especially, and they loved her. But I didn't get many people remarking on it one way or the other, actually. Which is interesting. What I've learned is people will complain, but if you actually do what they want, then nobody says anything.
Right.
But I have notes for characters. Another character that would be in a wheelchair that, be a minor character, but they're just, I don't know. I don't know if there's room in Anita for any more characters that are continuing characters. It's a big cast at this point.
Yeah. So maybe your characters will tell you though, because yours I think you're looking into a parallel universe and they're just letting you know what's going on.
Edward and Jason don't talk to me directly. They just show up and have done things. So, yeah.
So how is that different? How explain that? Like, instead of talking to you, they just show up. What does that difference look like for you?
Most of my characters are standing still till I sit back down at the computer.
Okay.
The adventure is over until I sit back down at the computer. But Edward and Jason, my 17-year-old dog is in the corner, and she has gotten herself stuck.
Oh yeah, go get her.
Deal with it. Take care of that. Take care of that.
So I have got to go rescue her.
Go rescue her.
Yeah, go get her. Yeah, we are like the biggest animal lovers.
I will be right back. She is 17. She is blind. She is deaf.
Oh no!
I gotta go save her.
Yeah,
Okay.
do not worry.
Save the puppy.
I'm like, that's what we would be doing.
No. I wonder what was going on. She kept looking over. I'm like, I hope everything's okay.
I know.
I think the dog should come back on the screen. I think we should meet the dog.
Oh, the baby.
Poor little thing stuck in the corner.
I love how she talks about the characters and how she talks about just kind of like, I'm just as surprised as everyone else when these things happen. And, you know, making it very clear that, you know, the story itself is an evolution and isn't, you know, pre-planned.
So
She's a puppy mill rescue.
yay!
And her name is Keiko. And she came with the name. She's named... The rescue named her after the orca that played Free Willy
Oh
in
yeah.
the movie. So she's Keiko, and she's black and white Japanese chin. And we got her when she was 4. She was lucky. She couldn't have babies. That's one of the reasons the puppy mill gave her up so soon, because she was sterile, just naturally couldn't have babies. And so that was useless to them. So they gave her up to rescue. And, and now she's 17. She'll be 18 in November.
Oh,
yeah.
Sweet baby. Yeah. We were all cheering for you.
We're like, go rescue.
Go rescue
I mean,
the
that's
puppy.
all of us. We're like all animal lovers. So it's like, no, you have to help the dog.
We, all our animals are rescues at this point. And she's our olden dogger now. And she's blind, she's deaf, she's got dementia. I mean, she just does not know what's going on most of the time. And every once in a while she gets stuck in a corner like a wind-up toy that's just, you know, those kind that hit the wall. And it's just like, and she was, when we got her, she was like a ballet dancer. She was so agile and everything. And it's heartbreaking to watch, but
it's really hard to watch.
I am honored that, you know, my husband and I are honored that we were here for her and we've seen her through her life. And if she makes 18, it will be the oldest dog we've ever managed to hold on to. So
that's incredible.
We have a big party for her.
Yeah, another rescue that we rescued, a foster fail that made it to 17. He was 10 though when we adopted him. And so he made it to 17, but if she makes November, she'll make it to 18.
I love that. And we've just got a couple of minutes left, and so let's try to get a couple more things in. Somebody asked, what kinds of books do you read, and what are your favorites?
I actually end up reading things as different as I can from what I write. I am I'm very into cozy mysteries and that kind of thing. But I find that I read a lot of nonfiction as well. We're talking about burnout. I'm going to blank on the title, aren't I? Yes, I am. I'm reading a book about how it's specifically aimed at women and how to avoid the burnout. I do not have, of course, that's the book I don't have with me. I mean, I came prepared with other things I've written. I came prepared with, the things I thought. Smolder, which
beautiful.
Just came out in March.
Yes, gorgeous. My gosh, that's so beautiful. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, wow, that is so exciting. Y'all check it out.
I love that. That is so exciting.
Wow. I am very excited. The 30th novel coming out, the 30th anniversary year. I worked really hard. That's why you're getting 2 books this year.
Oh, that gives me tingles just hearing that. That's just, it's so exciting. What are you excited? We've got there's one more question in the chat, but I want to ask first. I mean, obviously you don't want to give the book away, but is there anything about it that you're really excited about, or are there things that we can all really look forward to in it?
Yes. I'm trying not to give things away.
I know.
But, you get to see her father, her stepmother, her family on stage for the first time.
Wow. After 30 years.
30 years, 30 books, and you finally get to see her family in person in St. Louis. I don't want to give it away. I'm trying to think you get to see Anita do some stuff that she hasn't done since very early on in the series, and we revisit it. You're going to get to see her. The idea on one of the interesting ideas on Smolder and Slay both is that you think you're the biggest fish in the pond, but there's no such thing as being the biggest fish if the pond is big enough. There's always a shark out there that's bigger than you thought, and we're going to explore that a great deal in this book. How big and bad are you? And is there anything out there big enough to eat you? Because, Jean-Claude and Anita and everybody has really got a nice solid base of power right now, but is it enough?
Right. Wow. Is it enough? That's okay. All right. I'm excited because I'm just envisioning like giant shark monsters. This is what I'm saying. There's a bigger shark out there, like a megalodon, a supernatural megalodon is coming. Okay, maybe that's it. I don't know. One quick question from the chat asks me, any chance that the books will be turned into a movies or TV series? I know there's been talk about it over the years.
There has been. We've come close a couple of times, even signed contracts a couple of times, but nothing got made. I have no news at this time.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to keep our fingers crossed and hope that happens. Yeah. So just the last couple of minutes, in addition to you've got the 2 new books that have just arrived. What else do you have coming up that you can tell us about?
I am in an anthology called Down These Mean Streets, edited by Laurell K and Casey Azell. It has the second short story I've ever written in Anita's world that doesn't have any of the main characters in it.
Interesting.
It's called It's Always Sunny in Key West. I've actually been in 3 anthologies for Larry, and one was an Anita story, and one was a totally different world. And then this one is set in Anita's world, but it is exploring other cities and other vampires and their power structure in other cities in Anita's world.
Oh, wow. See, that's the kind of stuff I love. I love digging into the backstory and the world building behind the scenes. And
it just came out. I'm not going to be able to find a cover example for it. But Down These Mean Streets just came out. It's from Baen, the publisher's Baen, and Laurell K is one of the Laurell K and Casey Azell. So if you can't wait even until November and you want to visit Anita's world with something new, that, and I also have a story in the Weird Tales, 100 Years of Weird Tales.
Oh, I love that.
And that is an Anita story as well. And that, what title did I finally decide on? It's just one of those moments where you're sitting going, Mean Streets is in January, but the Mean Streets is in January. My husband just texted me, so he's listening.
He's been on the call being really helpful and awesome.
Has. But I thought the arcs were already out, so I may be wrong on that. But Weird Tales, the 100 is, that's just going to bug me. I think it's, that's what I finally discovered on. The e-arcs are out at Baen. That's what's out, the e-arcs, but the actual book is going to be out in January. Okay. But Weird Tales, the Anita story is called Cupid is a Knavish Lad. It's from Shakespeare.
Oh, I love that.
Beautiful.
So I actually, that's an Anita short story, and that is already out in, are going to be out in Weird Tales 100 their anniversary thing. And I should just write this down. I really should.
Well, I mean, it actually leads perfectly into the last and final question is what's the best way for people to follow your upcoming, your upcoming appearances or the books, the short stories that are coming out? Where's all the Laurell K. Hamilton news happening?
Well, I have my website, which is laurellkhamilton, .com. And then on the various, I'm on, oh my God, I do this every time. I've got to do a new business card for myself because I always sit there and go, which one is it? I am on Instagram and I believe Facebook is LKH capitals with an _ official. And the reason I'm sorry.
We follow each other on Instagram, so I'm just looking up your Instagram right now.
LKH _ official.
And then Instagram is official _ LK Hamilton.
And then what is?
Instagram is official _ LK Hamilton.
Okay. I will. I'm dyslexic, so if I reverse that,
Me too.
My apologies.
It's all right.
And then on TikTok, if I play TikTok, it will make noise. But there we go.
TikTok does it for me too.
Hang on. And LKH _ official on TikTok. So LKH first and then _ official. My husband just sent that to me. So there you go. And the reason I do not have my name on Twitter and other things is somebody already got there before me and wanted me to pay them money to unhostage my name. And I said no.
Ugh,
so
people are gross.
Creepy. That's just creepy.
Yeah. But yes, I'm on TikTok and Instagram and what's left of Twitter and also on Facebook. And when I started out, the internet was barely there and blogs were big. Blogs were the new big thing.
Mm-hmm.
I also have a blog and my goal is to be putting things up more often there. And I'm also on Goodreads. And, I'm pretty much, I know there are other things out there, but that's where I am right now.
All right. Well, Laurell, it's just been one of the great 90 minutes of my life here. And I know I'm not alone. We got a lot of urban fantasy geeks and Laurell K. Hamilton fans that are just, are filling up the chat here. And I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to talk with us and our listeners today. So thank you so much. And for the rest of y'all, thanks for tuning in. We'll see everybody next week. Don't forget to, if you're not following Laurell Laurell, you need to get on it because she's got so much awesome stuff coming out that you need to be the first to hear about it. So
thank you for having me. It's been fun and it's been interesting because I still get new readers with every book. Mm-hmm. Or I get people who come in on the books now and they go, and I had somebody ask me the other day, well, why should tell me about guilty pleasures? And it's like, it's 30 years ago. And I have to explain it. And, there are pagers in guilty pleasures.
Uh-huh.
You have pagers.
Yeah.
And that's how long ago the series has started.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
amazing.
The journey that Anita has taken over 30 years.
I know. Honestly, truly, thank you. This has been such a pleasure to speak with you, and thank you for taking so much time to answer all of the questions that we all had. It's been a real treat to have you on.
Well, you're welcome. I'm delighted to be here and glad to answer the questions. And thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for listening to That Witch Life podcast. Our music is by Dustin Schultz, editing by Corey Drake. If you like what we do, please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts. If you want to support the show, you can buy us a coffee or check out our merch on our Etsy store, or join us on Patreon for bonus content, ad-free episodes, or to join our Witch Squad. We are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For show notes, audio transcript, or to ask us a question to answer on a future episode, go to thatwitchlife.com. Until then, keep moding that shit. We will talk to you next week.
So mote it be.